Hello, I'm Catherine, a 38-year-old novelist with a passion for mystery writing, living a life many dreams of. My books have a dedicated following, and I'm able to support my family through my writing. I've been married to Peter for a decade, and we have a 9-year-old son, Stephen. In the early days of our marriage, Peter was employed, but he quit his job as my career took off. And for the last few years, he's mostly been idle, often spending his days playing pachinko. Recently, I discovered something disturbing. Peter has been unfaithful, lavishing expensive designer gifts on someone else, using my credit card. I've put up with his behavior for the sake of our son, but I've hit my limit. I can't stand by any longer. It's time for a change. This change was prompted by the most unexpected person stepping in to help me, someone I never thought would come to my aid. One day I noticed Peter dressing unusually in a suit which was completely out of character. Curious, I asked him about it. He seemed taken aback at first, but quickly recovered, telling me he was off to a job interview. "It's time I started working again," he said. I wanted to believe him, to think that he was finally looking to better himself for our family's future. Wishing him luck, I returned to my work, facing a pressing deadline. Hours ticked by, and it wasn't until 2 a.m. that Peter returned. The late hour and the mysterious job interview raised more questions than answers, and I knew then that I couldn't let things continue as they were. It was time to confront the reality of our situation and make some tough decisions for the sake of my well-being and our son's future. That night, Peter stumbled through the door, reeking of alcohol and perfume. Exhausted, or perhaps just careless, he collapsed onto the living room sofa, his smartphone slipping from his grasp but remaining unlocked in his hand. Overwhelmed by suspicion and curiosity, I couldn't resist. I picked up his phone to take a quick look. What I found there sent shockwaves through me. Undeniable proof that my husband was cheating on me with my best friend, Nancy. They had been at a fancy restaurant with a breathtaking night view just hours earlier. The betrayal felt like a physical blow. How could both Peter and Nancy, who was also married, do this to me? Tears threatened, but I stifled them, not wanting to wake Peter. Quietly, I transferred the incriminating photos and messages to my phone. I needed to collect myself and plan my next steps carefully. The following morning, as if nothing had happened, I asked Peter about his night. "Hey, Peter, about yesterday. You said you had an interview but got home pretty late. What happened?" He looked uncomfortable, his eyes darting away as he scrambled for an excuse. "I ran into a friend after the interview and we went out for drinks," he said. When I pressed him about who the friend was, he dismissed it. "Just some guy, Catherine. Do I need to explain everything?" "Right," I said, biting back my frustration. His evasiveness confirmed my worst suspicions, but also fueled my resolve to handle the situation with as much dignity and strategy as I could muster. A month has passed since that revelation, and the weight of Peter's betrayal still hangs heavy. I haven't confronted him yet, knowing it could irreversibly fracture our family. If it were only up to me, I might have already presented him with the evidence and demanded a divorce. But with our son and the complex emotions involved, I've had to consider every step carefully, knowing that whatever I decide will change our lives forever. Despite the turmoil in my heart, the thought of separating my 9-year-old son, Stephen, from his father was unbearable. Peter's frequent outings, supposedly to clear his head or meet friends, actually provided the perfect cover for me to gather evidence of his infidelity, something I had grown increasingly suspicious of. One day, seizing an opportunity while Peter was out, I rummaged through his belongings and found a stack of receipts for women's designer items, luxuries I certainly hadn't received. None of these high-end goods were in our home, leading me to one painful conclusion. Peter was lavishing these expensive gifts on Nancy, my so-called best friend. But the mystery deepened. How was Peter financing these extravagant purchases? He hadn't worked in years and was living off the modest allowance I gave him from my earnings. Concerned and needing answers, I devised a plan to follow him. I called my brother to watch Stephen, cloaking my real intentions under the guise of a shopping trip. "Hey, sorry to bother you out of the blue. Can you watch Stephen for a bit? I want to go shopping alone," I told him. My brother, puzzled because I usually preferred online shopping, raised an eyebrow. "Shopping? You've never been one to shop in person. What's up?" "Normally, yes, but today I need something from a store. Can you watch him for me?" I replied. He agreed, albeit with a reminder not to be gone long, as Stephen might get lonely. With my brother's help, I was free to track Peter. I spotted him downtown, arm in arm with Nancy, strolling into a high-end designer store with unsettling familiarity. Watching them together, a mix of hurt and anger surged through me. As they approached the cashier, I saw something that truly shocked me. Peter was paying with a credit card. My heart sank as I realized it was my secondary credit card, the one I usually left in an unattended drawer at home. Peter had taken it without my knowledge. The betrayal was deeper and more complex than I had imagined. Witnessing it firsthand was painful, but it armed me with the undeniable proof I needed. Now I had to decide what to do next, knowing that whatever steps I took would impact not just my life, but Stephen's as well. Over the past few months, while I was making significant purchases for my home office, including monitors, keyboards, and new furniture, I hadn't realized that Peter was exploiting this flurry of activity to cover his deceitful expenditures. Both our credit cards were linked to the same bank account, and amidst my hectic schedule, I hadn't scrutinized the statements closely enough. This oversight now haunted me as it became painfully clear. Not only was Peter unfaithful, but he was also misusing my funds to shower gifts on his mistress. Any remaining fondness I felt for my husband evaporated in the wake of this revelation. Although part of me blamed myself for not noticing earlier, I found it impossible to forgive his betrayal. I managed to snap some clear photos of Peter and Nancy together and headed home, my mind boiling with anger. In the following days, my thoughts turned to revenge. I frequently checked Peter's usual computer, knowing he left it unlocked and easily accessible, when he wasn't around, digging into his communications with Nancy. Soon enough, I discovered their plans for a romantic getaway to Kagoshima over the upcoming long weekend, a 5-day escape that seemed tailor-made for my plans of retribution. However, I faced a significant dilemma: ensuring my son Stephen remained shielded from the ugly truth about his father's actions. I reached out to my brother again, hoping he could help by looking after Stephen. "Hey bro, sorry to bother you again, but could you watch Stephen for me during the upcoming long weekend?" His response, though supportive, carried a hint of concern. "You mean for all 5 days?" he asked, sounding surprised. Before I could reply, he added firmly, "Catherine, stop trying to handle everything on your own. Peter's cheating on you, isn't he?" I was taken aback by his directness. "How did you know?" I asked, my voice a mixture of shock and curiosity. "I heard it from Stephen," he revealed. Hearing my son's name in this context was a jolt. Despite his young age, Stephen had sensed something was amiss with his father. This complicated things further, as it meant that Stephen was more aware of the situation than I had hoped. Now I had to navigate not only my response to Peter's betrayal, but also how to protect my son from the emotional fallout. I hadn't realized how much Peter's actions were affecting Stephen until my brother pointed it out. Despite my efforts to shield him, Stephen had picked up on the tension and pain in our household. As I was grappling with these revelations, Stephen, having overheard our conversation, came into the room. "Mom, it's okay, I'm on your side," he said, with a clarity that belied his young age. "Are you sure, Stephen?" I asked, touched by his understanding and support. "I don't want anyone who makes Mom sad. As long as I have you, I'm okay," he replied confidently. "Thank you, Stephen. And thank you too, bro, I expressed, feeling a surge of gratitude for their support. Bolstered by the encouragement of my son and brother, I resolved to take decisive action against Peter's betrayal. We began planning our move to a new home to coincide with Peter's planned getaway with his mistress. With my brother's assistance, we discreetly packed our belongings whenever Peter was out. The night before the long weekend, as Peter buzzed with excitement for his upcoming trip, I decided it was time to confront him and perhaps give him one last chance to explain himself. "Peter, what's with the suitcase? Why are you packing?" I inquired as he shuffled things around. "Oh, this. I'm going on a trip with a friend starting tomorrow," he answered nonchalantly. "A trip? Did you mention anything about that?" "It seems like a last-minute decision," I probed, hinting at my knowledge of his misuse of the allowance I gave him. My husband's annoyance was palpable as he tried to dismiss my questions. "Don't talk to me about it anymore, Catherine," he snapped. I lowered my voice, pressing him further. "Are you going on this trip with just a friend?" My tone caused him to flinch, his shoulders tensing as he realized the depth of my awareness. His reaction confirmed my suspicions, and I knew what I had to do next for myself and Stephen. Despite his obvious deceit, Peter tried to dismiss my concerns with a lie. "You've been nagging me a lot lately, Catherine," he said, trying to justify his secretive plans as a mere trip with a friend. "Have a good time," I retorted, my voice heavy with sarcasm, as I left the room. Deep down, if Peter had been honest with me then, I might have considered resolving our issues more amicably, perhaps negotiating some alimony and child support, even despite his infidelity. After all, there was a time when he was my pillar, supporting me when my novel struggled to find readers. I didn't want to hold on to hatred or resentment towards him. However, given the extent of his deception, I couldn't just stand by for the sake of my son and my future. Ending the relationship had become inevitable. There was no merit in preserving ties with someone so repeatedly dishonest. The next morning, by the time I woke up, Peter had already left for his trip. I checked the drawer immediately and unsurprisingly found my credit card missing. I promptly called the credit card company, reported the card as lost, and blocked any further transactions. As I was handling these logistics, my son Stephen woke up and greeted me with a bright smile. "Mom, today's the day, right?" he asked eagerly. "Huh?" I was momentarily confused. "We're moving to our new home today, right?" His eyes were alight with excitement, dispelling any residual anxiety I might have felt. "That's right, Stephen. I've canceled the credit card, and now it's time for us to move on to our new home," I confirmed, feeling a mix of relief and anticipation. "Yeah, I'm excited for our new home," he exclaimed. With my brother's invaluable assistance, our move went smoothly. As we settled into our new environment, the sense of a fresh start was empowering. Stephen's enthusiasm and resilience reminded me that no matter how challenging the circumstances, a new beginning was not just possible but also filled with potential. As we settled into our new home, I felt a sense of renewal wash over Stephen and me. Meanwhile, my husband's belongings were sent off to a location he had specified, marking a clear division in our lives. That tranquility was briefly interrupted the next day while we relaxed in our new surroundings, with my brother by our side for support. My phone rang. It was Peter. "Hello, Catherine. Is that you? Could you transfer me some money? I've spent more than I planned and now I need some extra cash," he said, clearly unaware that I had frozen the credit card he usually misused. "Didn't you say you were going to stick to your allowance?" I asked, my tone sharp. "Come on, don't say that. I can't enjoy my trip if you do that," he complained. "Alone? Aren't you with Nancy?" I retorted, cutting straight to the heart of the matter. Peter seemed taken aback. "What are you talking about? Who's Nancy? What's going on with the card?" "It's pointless to play dumb. Your lies aren't working," I snapped, my patience worn thin. "It's clear you've been cheating on me with my best friend Nancy. Did you think you wouldn't get caught?" This isn't what it looks like. It's not cheating. He tried to justify himself, his voice desperate. My anger flared, fueled by his feeble attempts to deflect blame. With my brother and son within earshot, I no longer held back my fury. Stop making excuses. You have a family, yet you chose to have an affair and misuse someone else's credit card. Do you realize how low you've sunk? Catherine, let's calm down. Peter attempted to soothe the situation. Calm down? How can I stay calm when I'm speaking to the person who betrayed his family so thoughtlessly? My voice rose, an outpouring of emotions I had contained for far too long. The call ended with those unsparing words, leaving a heavy silence in the room. My brother placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder, and Stephen looked up at me, his young face a mixture of confusion and concern. This moment, painful as it was, marked the beginning of a new chapter for us, one where we could finally move forward from the deception and hurt. Overwhelmed with a mixture of disgust and resolve, I made my feelings brutally clear to Peter. Let me make this clear. I have no intention of forgiving you or offering any help. You and the woman you cheated with can go straight to hell. Don't you dare show your face in front of me or Stephen ever again. With those final words, I hung up the phone, abruptly ending the call. Shortly after, Nancy, the woman he cheated with, called me, her voice tinged with demand. Catherine, what are you doing? She asked sharply. Nancy, long time no see. How's your trip with your best friend's husband going? I retorted, my words dripping with sarcasm. Shut up. Explain yourself. What are you talking about? She snapped back. Don't play dumb. You sent Peter's belongings to my house, didn't you? During our move, I had strategically shipped all of Peter's belongings to Nancy's house, fully aware that she was the other woman. Since Nancy was married, her husband was bound to be at home when the delivery arrived. I had included a detailed letter explaining the situation, ensuring that her husband would understand the full extent of our spouse's betrayal. As I shouted at Nancy over the phone, barely containing my rage, she blurted out, Are you serious? My husband found out and he's furious. Isn't that expected? You're having an affair even though you're married. My supposed best friend did such a disgraceful thing. You're the worst. I'm incredibly disappointed in you. I fired back. Excuse me? She responded, taken aback. I think that's my line. You were the one having an affair with my husband. Do you think I'd forgive you for that? Who showed disrespect first, Nancy? I wasn't serious. It was just a fling. There's no way I'd settle for a jobless loser like him. She tried to minimize her actions. Whether you were serious or not doesn't matter to me, I replied coldly, cutting through her excuses. The betrayal had severed any ties of friendship we had, leaving only the stark reality of her deception. I informed her bluntly, I'm divorcing Peter, and your affair is a fact that I won't forgive. I'll be demanding the maximum compensation from both of you, so be prepared. Compensation? I didn't agree to that. Why should I pay compensation? Nancy protested, her voice tinged with panic. It's only natural. You did something that warrants it, I replied firmly. But wait! I'm a housewife. I can't afford to pay compensation, she stammered. That's for you to figure out? Maybe you can ask your husband for help, though I doubt he'll be inclined to assist you now, I said coldly. Wait a minute, Catherine, please, she began to plead, but I was done listening. Goodbye, I said and hung up the phone, then promptly blocked her contact. I moved forward with the divorce proceedings through a lawyer, demanding compensation not just from my ex-husband Peter, but also from Nancy. I sought child support and reimbursement for the funds Peter had frivolously spent on my credit card. Nancy, now burdened with debt from the compensation payments, was served divorce papers by her husband and, I heard, was eventually forced to leave their home. Her attempts to rely on her family were fruitless, and she found herself working night shifts to make ends meet. Peter, having attempted to rely on Nancy only to be blamed for their downfall, found their relationship crumbling fast. They parted ways, and with his long spell of unemployment, he struggled to juggle several part-time jobs just to survive. If he ever falls behind on the compensation or child support, I am fully prepared to enforce the legal judgments. Meanwhile, Stephen and I are flourishing in our new environment. He is growing up quickly, blossoming in a home filled with love and free from the previous sadness. My focus is to continue providing him with a nurturing environment, shielding him from any further emotional turmoil.